Well, hello, my friends. Today's movie is made for Stephen Nelson, who sent a gift. And Stephen is more interested in me as a person than just having an archery lesson. So he's asked some questions, and I'm going to answer them. Uh, for instance, how old am I? Well, I was born in 1945. February 28th, 1945, in Belorme, Newfoundland, which is now part of Canada. Oh, there goes the streetcar. Anyhow, this is the kind of day that we're having, and let's have a little bit of fun answering Stephen's questions. Okay, boys, back in a minute. Okay, Stephen. So, Stephen has more or less asked me for a biography, liking to know something about my past and my childhood and stuff. So anyhow, yeah, I was born in 1945 in Belorme, Newfoundland. Now, Newfoundland was actually a British colony. It wasn't part of Canada yet, so I'm actually a British citizen, or at least that's what I was when I was born. Also, my father was a policeman, and I was born in a raging blizzard on February the 28th, 1945. My father was away on patrol, and he would go away sometimes for 2 or 3 days to the little communities and take people their welfare checks and help the doctor and these kinds of things. Register you when you were born and register you when you died and that kind of thing. But anyhow, he was away at that time. And in 1940, my father went down. He was in college, and he went down and tried to join the Royal Air Force to become a fighter pilot. And he found that he was colorblind, just with green, I think it is. And so they wouldn't let him become a fighter pilot. And they said, well, is there something else that you can do? And they said that they needed coastal policemen. They're called rangers, and they were trained just like the British Army and the commandos, same kind of training for 6 months, basic training. But anyhow, he went through that and became a policeman, and that's it. Here's a story about my dad. My dad wouldn't eat fish. We're from Newfoundland. And the reason was that one time a guy had drowned, and my dad had to help the doctor in the autopsy, and the doctor said pull down his pants. So my dad pulled down the guy's pants, and there was a great big crab that had been eating right into this guy's cheek of his ass, and it just threw my father right off, and he's never eaten fish since. Little stories about my dad. But anyhow, I guess this is what you're after, right, Stephen? Just talking about life. I know that my mother was working in a war plant in 1940 in Toronto, and she had gone home to visit her mother and father, and that's when she met my dad, and they got married and lived happily ever after. Anyhow, I'll be back and tell you a little bit more. Okay, back in a minute, Stephen. Okay, Stephen, so you were asking what bow I would use, what would be my favorite bow, and really, any bow that I'm shooting at the time, that's my favorite bow. These days I've been shooting this Osage Orange Home Guard bow, and it's 40 pounds. And I like it quite a bit, so I find that it's, not too heavy, easy to use, but that's the bow that I would use. Just a simple, regular bow. Makes me completely happy. Anyhow, so much for the bows, and we'll be back with another question in a minute. Okay, Stephen, you've asked when I started to do archery and how old I was. Well, I didn't really get into archery until I was about 55 years old, and that's because my son had got into a fight, and the police came to raid him, and they raided me too, and they took all my guns. I had 37 guns, and I belonged to a gun club, and everything was legal, and all my magazines were pegged at 5. Everything was legal, and they out and out just ripped me off. And it cost me $120,000 for lawyers and 2 years and 3 months of going to court. And at that time, I was given a mistrial. In other words, Madam Wong threw the case out, and she gave me an 11B, meaning that I could sue Brian Smith, the detective that was trumping up the charges and making, hills or mountains out of molehills and stuff like that. Nasty little man. Anyhow, that's when I got into it. But I'm going to tell you a story that is really embarrassing, and it just goes to show that you can't really trust boys. My mother had bought me a bow and arrow when I was about 7 years old, and I tried to make arrows, and I couldn't make arrows with a toot, they were circles. So my father had bought me 3 hunting arrows. So I would go out in the backyard, and I would shoot at my little target. Anyhow, up on the hill, our backyard was about 20 yards, then it went up a hill, and then there was a fence, a lattice-worked fence. And the guy that had this fence there had 3 dogs, and they were hound dogs, hunting dogs. And so I would go out in the backyard, and these dogs would be just at the lettuce, and they'd be just rah, 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 barking and biting at the wood, trying to get at me. So after a while, I got kind of tired of this. Now remember, I'm just about maybe 9. And I took one of my hunting arrows, and the dogs were barking, and fortunately, I couldn't shoot very good. And I shot a hunting arrow at the dog, and it went through the lattice work and stuck in the guy's back of his garage. Dogs keep it up. I get another arrow. Whang! I miss again. 2 arrows stuck into the garage. I've got 3 arrows. Yeah, I got my 3rd arrow. The dogs were just barking like crazy. Whack! Missed again. Thank God, I missed again. So now I want to get my arrows back, so I go up and I climb up on the fence, and I'm looking down at these dogs, and they're just rah, 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 rah. They want to eat me. So I can't get in the little partition there where I could get the arrow out. So I had to leave the arrows. Anyhow, next day, the guy's down saying to my father, your kid was shooting arrows into the back of my garage. Now, maybe they thought I wasn't trying to hit the dogs. I never got a spanking. My father never bought me any more arrows. But isn't that crazy? Tried to shoot the dogs. Just lucky I didn't. Anyhow, that's a little story about my past when I was a little Viking and would do little Viking things. Anyhow, back in a minute with another answer. Okay, Stephen. Well, Stephen, my younger son, who's 39, has taken an interest in archery and crossbow archery and compound archery. So he's dabbling in it and fooling around a little bit, and I'm helping him out, as best I can. Anyhow, that's one thing. Also, you're wondering about my little range here in the hall. Well, I've got 15 yards, but really where I stand is 14 yards. So I don't have a big amount of distance, but it's enough to practice and keep my hand in, But yeah, 14 yards to be exact. Anyhow, back in a minute. Okay, Stephen. Let's light it up. Mike Tyson smokes marijuana every day. Keeps him cooled out. And I do the same thing. I think you enjoy it too. I put a little filters on my J so that it takes a lot of the tar out. Works very good. But let's see here. You were also asking. Yeah, I started making movies about 10 years ago or so, at least. I'm not sure exactly when. And I don't have a chronological order. I know that there's over 300 of them, so I don't know how to help you in giving you a chronological order. But that's what I've got. Now, another thing you're asking is for some pictures. So, take a little Toki break. But yeah, I'm going to go and find some pictures of things and show them to you. And maybe then we might take a couple of shots or something. But basically, I think you're interested in things that I've done, you know. So I'll try to keep you informed on that. Okay, anyhow, back in a minute. You know, Stephen, talking about marijuana and Mike Tyson, I've been an athlete all my life, and drinking is a bad drug. Speed, bad drugs. These aren't going to get you to get ahead. But I found that marijuana does not affect me. I've won many, many gun competitions, IPSC competitions, and I smoked a joint before every one. And I did about 30,000 tattoos, and I smoked a joint before every one. And I've learned to shoot a bow quite well, enough that I can share the knowledge with you. And I smoked a joint before I shot every time. When I was a young guy and I'd gotten out of the Army, I just found that I had nightmares. You know, I just call them fear dreams, but, you know, nightmares. And I found that I would get very wary, you know, like especially when the sun was going down, I'd have to go outside. I couldn't handle being inside. After a while, I got over it. But I found that marijuana really soothed my nerves, made me relax enough that I could become quite creative. And I'm worth $5-6 million. I give most of my money to my kids, to people. But anyhow, that's what I've done. So all the reason I'm saying that is because 40 or so, 50, 55 years ago, 50 years ago, I was a drug dealer. That's right. I sold marijuana because I thought that it was really good and the government was down on everybody. And being a Viking, I just don't necessarily follow the rules. So I started to bring in marijuana. And it's a great education, you know. You can break it down into the ounces. You can break it down into the grams. You know, every time you sell an ounce for 28 grams and the baggie is 1.5 grams, you're selling the guy a baggie for that 1.5 grams. That's all profit. There's all kinds of little things that are going on like that, you know. But there's money in it when there's no money, because I tell you, the only Canadians that ever get ahead are criminals that don't get caught. Otherwise, you're taxed to death. Just taxed right out of existence. You have no growth capital or anything like that. It's very, very unfair to anybody who's actually trying to get ahead. But anyhow, after a few years and being a very successful drug dealer, neighbors turned me in, and I ended up going to jail for 60 days. And I quit dealing dope, so I've never broken a law since, and I did pay my debt to society, so I'm a completely free man. But the reason I'm saying that is just because, yeah, I was put in jail and all kinds of stuff and tortured for this stuff. And now it's legal, and that's a lot better for the world. You know, if you don't like smoking, don't smoke. But if it helps your nerves because you're all freaked out about things you've seen, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Anyhow, okay, Stephen. No, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, Stephen, so let's take a couple of shots, and then we'll go and find some older pictures that you were asking about. guys. So that's what we're going to do now. We'll go over and find some old pictures. The whole thing about the shooting today, though, is, put that tip on. Put that tip on. Just on the center line. It's not even pointing at the target. It's lower than the target. And when you're out, far out, you roll the arrow so it goes straight. When it's out there, that gives you enough time to line up as you come back. Don't come back and line up. Line up just in front of your face. Get it close to your eye. Line it up so it's close to your eye. And now you don't have to pull very far. And if you have consistent posture in that, you'll start to touch about the same place. But you're not trying to touch a place. You're trying to get it straight to the eye. Let those hands be all relaxed so that the pressure goes straight. Okay, Stephen? And when you do that, you'll see that you can get some real nice tight groups. That's what we're doing. Back in a minute. Hi, Stephen. So I went and found a few pictures, some pictures that I hadn't looked at in a long, long time. But here's a picture. I'm probably about 4 years old. And you can see my mother's hairstyle, how long ago it was. And, of course, that's my dad on the left there. But that's an early picture of me with hair. Okay, back in a minute. Yeah, okay, Stephen, so here's a picture of me I'd say about 16 years old. And I used to enjoy boxing for some reason when I was that age. But, so anyhow, there's another picture, and again you can see that no facial hair, and I have hair on my head. Anyhow, back in a minute. Yeah, okay, Stephen, so here's a picture of me. I'm about 21 years old. I had a pilot's license, so I was leaning on a little Champion, it was called, the airplane. But this is right after we came back from Cyprus, so we were wearing the blue beret instead of our forage hat. But, there's a picture. Again, you were asking about some old military pictures, so there we go. Back in a minute. And here's a picture from when I was over in Cyprus. So I'd be about 20 years old there. And a guy took a picture, and it's kind of neat because it's all faded and it got, wet and almost ruined, but I still have it. There's the UN flag and the Karenia Mountains off in the distance, and the soldier with the beret and the FN with the bayonet on it. There I am, sort of using my binoculars to watch a road where trucks went up and down, but that's what was going on in that day. But anyhow, there's a picture, and short hair. Anyhow, back in a minute. Yeah, okay, Stephen, so here's a picture. I'm probably about 24 years old, maybe 25. I've gotten out of the Army now, and but you can see that I'm actually at my father's house in the basement. It was Christmas time, and they were having a couple of drinks and celebrating Christmas. But that's where that picture came from. You can see that I did have a beard, and I had hair on my head, not too long. That's the thing, I guess. It wasn't too long. But there's another picture, so back in a minute. Yeah, okay, Stephen, so here's a picture that somebody snapped in my tattoo parlor years ago. You can see it's a long time ago. It was before anybody was wearing rubber gloves or anything like that. And I did about 30,000 tattoos over a 23-year period. And this guy just took a picture one time, and for no reason came in a month later and said, "Hey, I took a picture of you here." So I was really glad, because it's kind of a interesting picture and shows what I did for years and years. But anyhow, back in a minute. When I was going through the pictures, I came across this. And this is my second wife, Toby, and my younger son, Daniel. And Daniel's about 4, and Toby is probably only about 24, 25 at this time. She's passed away since then, but I just thought I'd show you this picture. She was beautiful. The most beautiful girl I ever went out with, that's for sure. And my son is a pretty handsome guy, too. Anyhow, back in a minute. Okay, Stephen. This is my best friend. Her name's Missy. And we hang out together quite a bit. Hi, cutie. She loves it when you tickle her ears. But anyhow, yeah, that's Missy, my pal. Okay, back in a minute. Okay, Stephen, so it's the next day, and I guess we'll close up the movie now. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and you did ask for some pictures, so I found a couple more. You were asking about when I was a soldier. This is the picture that was taken when we graduated from the regimental depot, and I was finally called a guardsman. But that's one picture. Another picture I have here is it's when I was all dressed up with a tux on. I was going to be the best man at a friend's wedding. And you can sort of see, I guess you can sort of see there, I have a little MGB. I was really proud of that little sports car. But yeah, that's one picture. And the last picture I'll show you is after I'd had my store, and I was a tattooist for 23 years, I started to sell tattoo equipment. So I felt that I was a storekeep. So I got a broom and took a picture in the initial Studio One tattoo supply store. But anyhow, that's some pictures. Well, my friend, I hope you have a good life, and I hope you enjoyed this movie for what it was worth. It's kind of embarrassing talking about yourself in a way for some reason. But anyhow, have a good day and have a good life. Thanks for tuning in. Bye now, buddy.